Hi, everyone. Scott Spence, Artistic Director at the Beck Center. And after a couple weeks hiatus, we're back at our Beck Center vlog called Above the Waist. We've had some great interviews with some wonderful Beck Center alumni from a few years ago and a few years before that. And today's guest holds a special place in my heart. He's gone on to such success, and he was around at Beck sort of in some of my early days as well, which dates us both, but when you look at him, you won't know that. He still looks like a raving 25-year-old vital guy and no gray hair. So it's my great privilege to introduce Beck Center alum and Broadway star, Dan Reichard. Hi, Dan.
Hi, Scott. Thank you so much for having me, and it's great to be back in touch with the Beck community. I love it.
Thanks so much for taking time to be with us today. I'm excited to talk about your background, and for those folks at Beck who are watching this and all the other people in internet land who, don't know your whole story, I think they'll find it a pretty cool story indeed. So the first question I always ask is, on March 12th and 13th, when this whole rock started to roll downhill, how was your life interrupted? What were you in the middle of?
Well, I had been traveling for various reasons in the month before, and was in New York a lot the week that things really started to shut down. In fact, I was at the play The Inheritance on the last day of Broadway. That was a Wednesday. Thursday was shut down, and you could feel it in the air. I mean, you could feel the tension and the anxiety, and that was a two-part play where there was like 3.5 hours, 3 intermissions, and every intermission, everybody went down and washed their hands. You'd never seen anything like it ever. And of course you're crying. It was a very powerful, intense, dramatic play, and everyone is crying, so you're all, it was just kind of crazy. I was at an opening night party for a show for Playwrights Horizons a couple days before. I mean, we were at a lot of very public things in the days leading up to Broadway closing. And so we moved out to my family farm, which is in West New Jersey, almost at the Pennsylvania border. And it's 40 acres, it's a wildlife sanctuary. It's been a very big blessing to be able to be, out in nature every day and have a lot of fresh air and more privacy. And that's where we've been for much of the last 3 months, and with some trips back to New York for various reasons.
Right. Yeah, it's certainly nice to have a place to hunker down and not have to, deal with a big city right now. So soon enough, hopefully, we'll all be able to regather our wits. But still, while it's all, heavy and upon us, it's nice to have a refuge. I'm glad you do.
I think it's been good for people in the city that other people left the city. It made it easier for everybody. So in a certain way, I felt guilty about leaving friends and leaving my neighborhood and my community behind. But also, I think it made it easier that the whole population thinned out, just because it's difficult enough. We were there this weekend for the protest for Black Lives Matter. We marched in several marches, and that's a whole other intense experience happening in New York. Everybody wearing masks, which was incredible. And even before that, I was sensing the city opening up a bit. So then this all started happening, and the city is taking on a life that I don't think I've ever seen.
Yeah.
I've been there 20 years now.
Yeah, it's a big day. New York's really opening up a lot more today, and so it's I'm sure going to be a very interesting experience after these 2.5, 3 months. So so tell us a little bit about both your local, obviously you're a West Side Cleveland native and a Beck alum. So give us just a quick background on your local, but specifically your Beck Center connection.
So I was born and raised in Rocky River. I think it was mid 80s. I don't care about dating myself. It was 1985, I started Lakewood Little Theater, and I did a couple shows there. Wizard of Oz, where I played one of the Munchkins, but famously in one of the performances, had the witch personally chase me off the stage. So I waited until all the other Munchkins were off the stage when Wicked Witch appears, and I made her personally run after me. So a star was born.
Absolutely. A ham was born. Yes.
Yes, exactly. I think I got in trouble for that.
Well,
Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, I did the next season, and that was, I have, just light memories of that. And then in high school, I came back to Beck, and I did Jesus Christ Superstar, which was a great, very successful production. And then you and I were reminiscing that I was cast in your Funny Thing Happened on the Way to the Forum, which I ended up seeing was a great production. But my parents made me drop out because my grades were getting bad, and so I was shut down from doing theater, which was just kind of hysterical.
Yeah, what you gonna do? But maybe it propelled you on to the person you are today.
We've made up. And finally, also I taught for 3 summers under Lynette Gutman for Summer Studio. In fact,
That's right.
years I got to be the director of it, or and that was
Yeah.
really cool. So 3 different chapters, I'd say, of my times at Beck.
Yeah, our musical theater camp has always been popular ever since that time when Lynette founded that. And of course, this summer, all our classes, we started with camps today. In fact, they're all virtual for the summer. So all our wonderful teachers are working out ways to hold camps and classes, online, and musical theater camp included later in the summer. So that's my advertisement for today, is we're still taking enrollments, and we have some of the best teachers around.
I think it's been fun for people to adapt to this virtual learning. People who are doing voice lessons over Zoom, people like me who are doing therapy over Zoom. That's that's adult acting classes.
Yeah, absolutely, it is. Yeah. So after your formative high school years, et cetera, when you were participating in shows at school and also in the community and at Beck, you decided to pursue this, and like many seniors, decided to do, I'm sure, the audition circuit for musical theater schools, and you landed at one of the best. Tell us a little bit about your experience there.
It was interesting. After my junior year of high school, I did a summer program, and that was at Carnegie Mellon. And it was like my top of my head being opened up, and all this information just came, getting dumped in there. And I started taking voice lessons there, and acting classes, and movement, and it was just a really intense summer before my senior year. Something, if you're able to do any sort of pre-college program, I think that's something I'd suggest, because you do. I think it did help me a lot when I went to college, and when I started applying for schools, I wanted to go to Carnegie Mellon. I just loved it there.
Sure.
And it was my last audition was for University of Michigan School of Musical Theater. And I just felt something. It was just a complete gut feeling that was the right place for me. It was like this great feeling of belonging, and I kind of let go a lot of what I thought I wanted and just went with my gut instinct on that. And it really was, for being a young person, it was one of my best decisions of my life. Was that I listened to that voice, and not what I thought I should want to do. And in the years following, very quickly, Michigan started becoming one of those schools that became top 10 and top 5, and people now say it's 1 or 2 or whatever, but it doesn't really matter. I think what really matters is where you feel comfortable learning,
Right.
An environment, an atmosphere that really makes you feel comfortable to go down the education of fine arts and performing arts and arts management and all of those different departments.
Yeah.
A place where you really feel as good as possible being there, so you can keep your head straight while you're learning.
I think you're right. Michigan, for those people out there who aren't sure of the hierarchy of musical theater programs, certainly I think it's hard to argue that it's not a top 5 program, along with Carnegie, CCM, and, a handful of others, and some of that is marked by the success of alumni, who go on to work on Broadway. And gosh knows Michigan has more than their fair share of alumni, including you, who've, really gone on to make their mark. So it's a tremendous program in terms of setting the table for what's next.
That's so true.
So after Michigan, you pretty quickly made the move east to New York, like so many people do after your showcase. And speaking of
years ago.
Yes, right. So speaking of showcase, did you land an agent right away?
I had a very, very lukewarm ovation from from showcase, which was interesting. And I say this to young graduates that I meet from our school when they come to New York, and I say, don't tell yourself anything about what happens from showcase, because I had a few agent and manager appointments. I didn't know what the heck I was doing. And I was so green. All of us were in my class. One of my classmates was Celia Keenan Bolger, who won a Tony Award this last year. She was my best friend in college and still is one of my closest friends. And we all came to New York so green and so sheltered still and so good. We were just such good, wholesome young people. And so I started that whole thing, but I did not even have an agent. And one of my teachers from Michigan was choreographing a show at North Shore Music Theater, and they were doing like a group audition. And I sent a note in with the audition runner, and I said, I'm a student of Linda Goodrich's. She wasn't there, but I would love to audition for this production of Fiddler on the Roof. And North Shore Music Theater is, for the viewers out there, is in the North Shore of Massachusetts. And it's a theater in the round. And so they because I was a student of Linda's, a friend of the directors, lucky I got in, and I got in there and I was just hopping up and down and singing and being crazy, and I was a ball of ambition and enthusiasm and joy. And so they invited me to do that show, and I did the big Russian tenor solo.
Right.
And with that came another show, Christmas Carol, which was how I got my equity card. So during the course of working there, I became a member of Actors Equity, and one of the actors who was in Fiddler on the Roof said, I'd love to set you up for meeting with my agents. And so I met them, and I went to one of their group audition things where they would see all these people. And again, I got in there and I had tennis shoes on, and I was just hopping up and down and jumping up. They said, you look like you would have flown out the window if it had been open, So anyway, I started working with this one agency, and then that's kind of how I started getting my way. And by the end of that first year, I was playing my first regional theater lead role, which was Charlie in Brigadoon at the Goodspeed Opera House, which of course is a beautiful theater in Connecticut, on the Connecticut River. And that was the first time I was getting, reviews by really big publications. And I came back to New York after that first year, and I said, I'm not going to leave until I do something in New York. I have to stay in New York. And so I got my first and only job that wasn't being an actor, which was selling furniture at this furniture store. And I was terrible at it. I never sold furniture. I just fold. It was like the home accessories, like towels. I would just fold them up the whole day.
There you go.
And I still fold towels very beautifully, and I always insist I'm the one that does it.
Now you have a fallback position if you need it.
Exactly.
Bed Bath and Beyond Reichard, I can see.
I could work at a spa or have a spa, and it's just known for its towels. But anyway, so what was I going to say?
We're, we're,
That time 9/11, I was in New York, and I was so close when it happened. In fact, I heard it. I heard
wow.
that was an intense morning, just like the times are very intense now. But I was working at that furniture store. I remember that, and everything in theater was getting shut down in New York, like it is now. And I just kind of, waited a few months for started doing little readings and little workshops of things, very little thing. But I did this one reading, and my agents got me in for Forbidden Broadway.
Right.
For those of you who don't know it, it's been
I didn't
around.
even know if you remember that I came to see you in that.
I do remember that.
There you go.
That's so awesome, Scott. Thank you. And how cool that was. It was just this weird connection from this reading that I done. They said, "You did that reading, okay? Let's give this guy a shot." And I was 22 or something like that. And the three other actors, it was for the 20th anniversary celebration of the show.
Right.
And so I got it, and that was my first New York City show, and it was incredible. That was the first time I was in the New York Times. First time Stephen Sondheim saw me in something. Lots of other firsts happened. My first 8-show a week in New York. It was a very cool time.
Yeah, well, I know you did a couple of other original off-Broadways as well, but I really want to pivot to sort of what you've, become known for and hang your hat on, which you are the original Bob Gaudio and the Jersey Boys, which I said the Jersey Boys, that sounded kind of odd, Jersey Boys. So obviously, in such a mega hit, so big that, all these years later, I can't even get the rights yet because it won't stop touring. But tell us a little bit about that audition experience, and a story or two from the run of that show, which you did for 26 months. That's pretty outstanding for an original cast member to hang on, for a full second year and beyond.
It was great, and it was under great encouragement by the writers for me to stay, as well as the other guys were staying too. And because the show was hot through the time I left it, I always joke, my concerts where I say, we were the Hamilton of our day.
But
anyway, the story of how that came about was I had done this off-Broadway show, as you had mentioned. It was a show at the Public Theater that George C. Wolfe directed. It was called Radiant Baby. And it was about this artist, Keith Haring, who we all would recognize as art if we saw it. But he, the director, Des McAnuff, was putting together this new show, Jersey Boys. And anyway, so my agents called and they said, Daniel, we're getting an opportunity for you to audition for this show at the La Jolla Playhouse in California. It's called Jersey Boys. It's about Frankie Valli and the Four Seasons. And at the time, of course, there was a huge backlash against all the jukebox musicals and everything. So I was took myself very serious, I was a serious actor now, so I didn't do jukebox shows. And they said, no, just shut up, Daniel, and just go to the audition. And so I went to the audition very reluctantly. And I walked in and Des McAnuff said, I saw you in that Keith Haring show. I always wanted to meet you. I've always wanted to work with you.
Wow.
Don't read that part you're going to read for, which you're totally wrong for. Why don't you read for this part, the part of Bob? Go out in the hallway, read. I just read it like this. I came in, I just read it. Of course, I'd been complimented, so I was kind of a little more interested in that now. So anyway, and I said to them, they said, well, that's great. They said, anything else? I said, well, I play the piano. And I sat down at the piano and I played Oh What a Night, which ended up being one of my songs in the show. And I was asked to do it, and it was the easiest audition for anything I've ever done in my entire life. It was for the biggest thing I ever did. I guess it's
wow.
When it's so right for you, it was so right, and I was so in the right place at the right time, in the right time of my life too. And so from then on, we went to La Jolla. The show was this huge success in California. They kept extending it. we moved back to New York, and I was happy they didn't make us re-audition. They cast us, and we were started rehearsing for the Broadway production. A month of previews. They were giving tickets away. By the time the show opened, we were on the Today Show. Katie Couric kept us on the whole morning, and then the show was a total phenomenon like that. It was great. So it happened really fast, and then all of a sudden we were on every amazing television show, the Late Show with David Letterman and Regis and Kelly and Dick Clark's New Year's Rockin' Eve on ABC.
Right.
And it was a real phenomenal experience, and I got to meet many of my idols in show business, because every day somebody iconic was in the audience, presidents and writers and playwrights and Broadway stars. And I remember when Cheetah Rivera came, when Liza Minnelli came, and going out for drinks with Cheetah Rivera afterwards. I mean, I could write a book about the stories for that time.
And maybe you should. And maybe you should.
About it. It's called The Least Famous Person in the World.
Yeah, I like that. Well, as this COVID keeps going on, you're going to need to do something. So
I know.
a book makes sense. So tremendous. Were there any of the other three cast members? Was it their first Broadway show, or were you the newbie?
John and I were the newbies. John Lloyd, who played Frankie, and I had never done a Broadway show. Bobby was a swing in the original Sideshow, and Christian was in the original The Who's Tommy, which was directed by
his Des McAnuff connection. Yeah.
Yeah, but none of us, in fact, really, I had the most. I was the youngest of the four of us, but I had the most work going on in New York. I had done the most shows and more recent high-profile things. But still, this was way, way beyond my expectations.
Yeah. So in a 2-year plus run of a show, not even including the La Jolla, preview and tryout, we always crave those stories when things didn't quite go as planned. So I make it a routine. I was talking to Rebecca Pitcher, BW alum, Rebecca, I'm sure. Then she did Christine. She, regaled us with the night she caught on fire because the pyro went bad. So I'm hoping you didn't catch on fire. But any juicy remembrances of that's right, this was the night when that happened?
Oh gosh, well, I don't have too many bad ones, but I'll do really quick ones. There was a time where Titus Burgess, who was also in the original show, Michael Longoria, two of the actors in the show. I was backstage. We would make crosses behind the backdrop, and there was like a ditch there, and I was doing chaîné. They were going to come around, so I was doing chaîné turns like across the thing towards them. But I didn't realize there was a ditch, so I fell like all the way into the ditch, which was pretty funny. There was a time when I was narrating the show. I narrated the show for 50 minutes. And I got I was talking to one of the actresses, like, well, the scene was going on. Then I would come back into the narrating it. And I didn't know where it was. But my first line was, "Here's how it was," where I was like, going to lay it down. So, "Here's how it was." Even the thing with, you have to understand the thing, and my head just started sweating.
Right.
And then I think that one of the other things I just remembered was, as I'd done, almost 1,000 performances, I was really, when I knew I had to leave the show, was when I was talking to the audience, and I don't phone things in, but you just can't help when you're repeating something over and over and over again to go into some sort of weird, like, trance-like state.
Automatic pilot of sorts.
The automatic pilot. And I was talking to, 1,300 people, and I woke up in the middle of talking, and I was just blown away that I didn't even remember where I'd been the last 10 or 15 minutes. I was so in this kind of trance about it all. And that was that was one of the more fascinating experiences.
Then that rings a bell. You know, if you read Laurence Olivier's biographies, he talks about going through massive stage fright periods. And your story rings a bell that maybe he had that same experience. And one of the things that triggered him was that, you know, suddenly he went away on stage and it's petrified him the next night going, what if that happens again?
I couldn't imagine doing Shakespearean speeches night after night after night. I mean, with all like the density of those speeches, that would be, you know, that would be, again, it is like you do you know, people like Liza Minnelli talk about working something so much that it is autopilot, and that's a good thing, and that's surely the case with the great actors. But still, I mean, just I should read that. That'd be really interesting. But I've definitely had various chapters of stage fright myself, you know, and then chapters of just invincibility.
Okay, well, that's good that there's a balance at least.
Yeah.
You know, you just never know what's coming the next night. So after 26 months of that, obviously it's time to move on and explore some other things. And I know that you got to sample one more Broadway show, which was the Whorehouse Revival, correct?
Well, yes, that was the thing. That was something I did. It was like a special benefit performance on Broadway.
Okay.
And then I played Candide. I went immediately from Jersey Boys to Candide at Lincoln Center. So that was the next really big thing. As the first time I've been above the title on something like that. So that was a really cool thing to have an experience like that at Lincoln Center and at the New York City Opera. That was pretty incredible.
Despite all those great credits, the one thing that I think the credit that'll make my wife the happiest to know about when she gets a chance to see this is your live theatrical presentation of Emmett Otter's Jug Band Christmas.
Ooh, yeah. That was the last theater show I've done, actually.
Okay.
And that was really cool. That was with the Jim Henson organization and Christopher Gattelli, who's an amazing director choreographer who won a Tony for his choreography in Newsies. But one of my friends had said that when Chris told him, well, we're going to work on Emmett Otter's Jug Band Christmas, the Jim Henson television special from before the Muppet Show, I think, or before the Muppet movie. And I didn't even really know it, but he said, you have to get Daniel Reichard to do that. You have to get Daniel Reichard to do that. So he asked me to do this reading. The next thing you know, we were going back to the Goodspeed Opera House with an incredible, like, star-studded cast of amazing musical theater stars. And I was in a damn otter outfit. You know, I was like, fuzzy-faced and in a bodysuit, and I had a huge tail. The one performance, my tail got caught in the door, and I had to, like, literally pull on. I mean, the audience like laughing at me,
Right.
but it was pretty incredible because you're doing scenes with Jim Henson puppets. You know, we just, I mean, that was really one of the best experiences. There's talk of it coming to New York actually 10 years later. So
Okay.
I don't think it's gonna happen this Christmas.
Yeah, no, probably not. So, but what a cool title. And as you said, that was the last thing you did. And you had mentioned previous to us recording is that, you know, you kind of divide your career in New York up 10 years of live theater and musicals, and, you know, now 10 years of something else. And it's the something else that I want to kind of wrap up and culminate with, that the Jersey Boys has given rise to something that in an odd way perpetuates itself. So tell us what the Midtown Men are and how it came to be and how you managed to sustain such a long period of time doing this.
Thank you for asking about it. It has been a very cool experience. So what happened was, as my time at Jersey Boys was coming to an end, we were being asked to sing, the guys and I were being asked to sing at these various celebrity birthday parties or Red Cross events or, you know, fundraisers and some really interesting private concerts. And we would get up in front of the crowd and we would have the songs. We couldn't sing songs from Jersey Boys, so we were singing
Right.
the Beatles and the Beach Boys and Motown songs. And we would just get up in front of these crowds and we'd wing a 60-minute concert. And we all left the show, all went on, worked on other shows, but people kept asking us to sing together. And it was very, let's say, financially joyful.
Right.
And so we kept doing it. And after a while, we said, we have a show. Like, we've accidentally created a show where we all have our moments. Everybody talks. We tell stories about our life together, our favorite backstage memories from Jersey Boys when so-and-so came, and then we'd sing songs. And once we left the show, we could sing songs from the show in addition to the Motown and Beach Boys. And we went through a lawsuit with Jersey Boys that
I was
year.
going to ask if there's ever been any umbrage between the organization and what you guys have invented.
Oh yeah. But that was also 10 years ago. I mean, that was right at the beginning. And without like even wasting my time getting into all of the blow by blow, even though that is a very interesting story.
Yeah.
I grew up a lot during that time. I'd say I didn't consider myself a grown up until that time, because you're going up against people who have a lot of power and a lot of money. But there were things that we felt we should have fought for, including our claim to being from the original cast of Jersey Boys. And we went through 10 months of lawyers, and we ended up in New York federal court arbitration. And it was a great, great learning experience. By this time, we knew there was something special about what we were doing, and we were still doing our concerts, our first, 10 to 20. And so we kept going, and we finally settled the lawsuit, and we came out what we consider successful, because we kept our show. We were the Midtown Men, and we started. So the first year we did probably, 30 concerts. The second year we did 120. And then we just started touring all over, and big cities, small towns, everything in between. So, the Kennedy Center, the Beacon Theater in New York. Then we were in, Cleveland, Mississippi, not Cleveland, Ohio. We were in Huntington, Tennessee. We were in, Pueblo, Colorado. And we have done almost 1,000 concerts together. We produced 2 PBS specials, 2 albums, and we did this all ourselves. We had our team, but we self-produced, and nobody in the theater has ever done anything like what we've done, to really create a separate brand off of a different brand that they all were a part of. Certainly nobody's done it to the extent that we have. And we're slowing down even before this. We're still working together, but now we're all thinking about what's next, because it's been a long and amazing, but physically and emotionally challenging time. But it's been a great thing to be an entrepreneur in the arts, and that's what I say to students and to young people. I say, really make your own opportunities and have fun doing that. When you're in college, put together a small show, put together a cabaret, or not when you're in college, when you're in high school, or put your own show together at, ask the Beck Center to help you, do a little cabaret show or whatever, because you really learn so much when we wrote it together, we choreographed it together, we made all the decisions. We had a few labels that were interested, and then we just said, we want to hold on to it for better or for worse. We want to control something in our lives, especially going through a big lawsuit. You sort of say, I want to have this on our own. But gosh, we have done so many fun things. We opened for Bruno Mars at this amazing concert in Texas. That was so cool. Sing with the National Symphony, sing with the Boston Pops. You know, it's just been great. And we have learned so much. So I'll talk about it like it's past tense because I'm thinking about what's next. But
Right.
really, truly, 10 years together. It was 10 years together as the Midtown Men. Wow, it was really cool.
Yeah, it's spectacular. I thought it was such a great idea, and I've always been curious about the litigious nature of it all. But I've always thought, what a great idea. But it's just amazing that it just went on, and I mean in a good way, of course. But yeah, after 10 years, I'm sure you're looking, to figure out what the next chapter is. And since we're segueing into the last few minutes, I know you don't know what the future holds, but what do you want the future to hold?
I was thinking a lot about what I want to write for myself, because I think I'm not that interested in getting back into the audition game. I think, at least for theater, for television and film, that would be great, but I'm not a television and film actor. I really am not. I would like to be, but I've never really tried.
Right.
And so that's a possibility, but again, I don't ever get really too excited. I think about what I want to write, but I have this one idea for a Netflix show that I want to write a pilot to and see if, I have a bunch of really funny ideas. It's comedy. So again, I do kind of want to write a show business memoir because I have a lot of really, really cool stories. Other than that, also producing, I think that could be something I get into. And also, where I am right now, also just kind of not being so obsessed with show business, as I've had a really solid, fun 20 years, is to think about what else I want to do as far as being a part of society. Mm-hmm. And if that involves not just necessarily philanthropic, raising money, but actually, doing work for people who need more than I do. I've been, so privileged, and especially going to the protests, but I've been thinking about this quite a lot. There's a lot of people that need help in New York City, whether it's the homeless, the hungry, youth members of the LGBTQ, homeless community, which is a community that struggles very much, youth mentoring. So that was all the stuff I was really gearing up to do right when March hit. So
sure.
So I'm interested in how that kind of work. But that's a big goal for me right now, is to become involved a little more outside of show business.
Well, that's great. Well, regardless of the fork in the road and where it takes you, I know based on past success that we're going to enjoy all the successes that come your way, no matter what you decide to do. And I thank you so much, Dan, for being part of our little video blog today.
Thanks, Guy. And I want to congratulate you on your work, over the past 30 years at Beck Center. And I can't say enough, even though I'm sure there are people like our good friend Rory O'Malley, who was more involved in the Beck Center than I was, but I definitely feel a kinship to people that went there, and I think it's such an important place for Cleveland, and the fact that you are still leading the way and have a team with you that really gives a resource to young people to learn and for a community to get together over the arts, I think is so important. So to all the people watching out there, keep talking Beck Center up and keep it going, because it's an important place in Cleveland.
Dan, thank you so much for that. And again, I'm not shy about asking. I've been trying to hit your schedule right to get you to come talk to our alums while we're in New York. And I know a time will come when I'll reach out and we'll make you a slightly bigger part for a moment of what we do. And we love to bring that collaboration back. And I know you're a gracious guy, and I know you'll help us out when the time is right for us both.
Absolutely. I would love to.
Awesome. So thank you everybody for tuning in. Our guest today was Daniel Reichard, wonderful West Side alum and most famous for Jersey Boys and now the Midtown Men. If you get to catch them in concert, maybe in this next year, maybe one of your last times, who knows? So go out and see them and support what they do. And speaking of support, as you all know, it's a rough time for the arts right now. So support your arts where you can. We are working so hard to get live performance back to you. We're not sure when that's going to happen yet, but in the meantime, at our website, www.beckcenter.org, we've got the ability to donate and help us out while we gather our steam and our feet, and we'll be back to you. So thanks everybody, and we'll hope to have another vlog coming at you with another alum here shortly. Thanks everyone.